Time for a Nuzlocke. The game being used is Pokemon Fire Red. These are the rules for the Nuzlocke. You can only capture the first Pokemon per route. However, if the first Pokemon encountered is the one that you already caught, then you're allowed to try again. Or Dupe's Claws. When they faint, then it's death and can no longer be used. Here are the additional rules I'll go with. Set mode. No duplicates allowed. Gift and trade Pokemon are allowed. Items are allowed. And no legendaries. A few things worth explaining is nature, EVs, and IVs. For nature, every Pokemon has their own nature that makes them unique, and there's a total of 25 different natures. Natures affect the Pokemon stats, usually an increase by 10% for one, and a decrease for another. Although some Pokemon natures won't affect anything, since a 10% plus with a 10% negative will make it neutral. The stats that get affected are attack, defense, special attack, special defense, and speed. Each Pokemon captured, I'll make sure to include the nature's buffs and debuffs on the screen to help. This chart should help you understand which natures give what buffs and debuffs for each stat. EVs, or effort values. After a Pokemon is defeated, they'll give a certain EV. Like beating a Pidgey will give a speed EV to help your Pokemon become faster. There's also vitamins that will add to the effort values. I think it gives 10 plus depending on which vitamins you buy or find. They're extremely important when grinding for certain items or for making sure your Pokemon is in peak performance. IVs, or individual values, they're Pokemon genetics. So because of that, some Pokemon have better stats than others. So if I capture two of the same Pokemon, due to IVs, one could have had a slightly higher defense while the other has a drastically superior special attack, since the numbers range 0 to 31 for each stat. With that explained, let's begin Pokemon Fire Red Nuzlocke. We'll start with naming ourselves and our rival. I went with Waldo and named my rival Gary. Next, we go to the grass and find ourselves in Oak's laboratory, where we get to choose our starters, Bulbasaur, Charmander, and Squirtle. I went with Bulbasaur since I like Bulbasaur and named him Malcolm. This Bulbasaur has a gentle nature with the ability Overgrow, so if he has less than a third of his health, then his grass attack moves will do an additional 50%. We have our first fight against Gary and eventually win. Gary and I get our Pokédexes, and Oak pressures us into fulfilling his life dream since he's too old. To progress, I go to the Pokemart and go back to Oak's laboratory to hand him his Parasol. Shortly after, we're handed some Pokeballs. Some Pokemon start the Nuzlocke once they get their Pokeballs, while others start the Nuzlocke after getting their starters. I went with the former and quickly catch a Mankey on Route 22, named Yumi. She has Vital Spirit, which is useful if the opponent uses Yawn or Sleep Powder. I also get a Rattata on Route 2, naming him Ray. He has Guts, which is incredibly useful when he gets poisoned, burned, or paralyzed. One last thing I get is a Caterpie in Viridian Forest named Kobe, which has Shield Dust, which means he'll be unaffected by additional effects of damaging moves. A little later, I bump into Gary at Route 22, and we fight. It starts off with Ray against Pidgey. I felt a bit unprepared, as Pidgey used Sand Attack, and his tackles did some damage. I switched to Malcolm and had him use Leech Seed. Eventually, a Leech Seed lands and I have Malcolm growl and wait things out. After the Pidgey faints, the option to switch appears. That's when I realized I hadn't put the game to set mode yet. I ended up switching to Yumi and back to Malcolm. For some odd reason, Charmander didn't use Ember, so Malcolm's Leech Seed did his job and the match was over. Afterwards, I do some training and Caterpie evolves into Metapod. Eventually, I face off against Brock and send out Malcolm. A few Bind Whips later and I get the Boulder Badge, and move on to Cerulean City. On Route 3, I catch a Pidgey named Paula with Keen Eye. It's especially useful against Pokemon that use Sand Attack or Smokescreen, since it won't have any effect. While at Mount Moon, I catch a Zubat with Inner Focus named Zane. With Inner Focus, he won't flinch against a 10% bite or moves like Fake Out or Astonish. While training, Kobe evolves into Butterfree and now has the ability Compound Eyes. All this does is increase accuracy, so moves like Poison Powder and Sleep Powder and such now have a higher chance of landing. Malcolm also evolves into Ivysaur. After Mount Moon, I catch an Ekans on Route 4 and name him Evan. He has Shed Skin, so if he has a status effect, there's a 1 in 3 chance that Shed Skin will activate and get rid of the effect. Above Cerulean City, I encounter Gary and we fight. It starts off with Malcolm versus Pidgeotto, and since I didn't feel confident with Malcolm's speed, I swapped to Zane. I didn't really know what to do, so Zane died, and I threw out Ray, who died next. And both deaths were completely preventable. The reason being, Malcolm was faster, and landed his Sleep Powder and was tanky enough to survive a Gust. He landed the Leaf Seed and then used another Sleep Powder. Next was Charmander, so Malcolm Sleep Powdered, then I swapped to Yumi. The Charmander woke up and almost took Yumi down, but I swapped to Paula, who took another Ember. It was close, so I had Paula use Quick Attack, and that took down the Charmander. Next was Abra, who only knew Teleport, so I healed the team and Paula took Abra down. Last was Rattata, so I Sand Attacked, followed by Yumi's Karate Chop, and that finished the match. After taking Gary's lunch money, I went to the Pokemon Center to bury Zane and Ray as digital corpses. We deal with the trainers on Route 24 and Paula evolves into Pidgeotto. We help Billy turn back into a human and we fight Misty. Malcolm's Sleep Powder and Vine Whip combination gets us the second badge, the Cascade badge. We capture a Meowth on Route 5 named Mia with the ability Pickup. It's only useful outside of battles where you get a variety of interesting items like potions, TMs, or even rare candies, after doing a set amount of steps. I move to Vermilion City and go to Diglett Cave and find a Doug trio. I name him Dugs, and he has Arena Trap, which prevents Pokemon from escaping or trainers from switching their Pokemon while Dugs is there. While doing some fishing on Route 24, I encounter a Magikarp and catch her. I name her Maggie, and she has Swift Swim, which means when it rains, her speed will increase. Next, I catch an Oddish on Route 6 and name her Serena. She has Chlorophyll, which is the sunny version of Swift Swim. I catch a Spearow on Route 11, naming her Bee. Bee has Keenite, just like Paula. While on SS Anne, trying to find the HM cut, I encounter Gary yet again. It starts with Paula against Pidgeotto. Paula's around 5 levels above, so that Pidgeotto did not stand a chance. Next was Raticate, so I switched to Yumi, and she survives a Hyper Fang. Given how Yumi was 2 levels above, and presumably faster, and how fighting moves are super effective on normal types, I had Yumi use Karate Chop, but Raticate used Quick Attack, ending Yumi's career early. So in return, I had Malcolm euthanize the Raticate. Next was Kadabra, who did some damage on Malcolm after he poisoned Kadabra. I swapped to Kobe to heal Paula. I sent out Paula and she took down Kadabra. Last was Charmeleon, so Paula landed a few Sand Attacks and some Gust later along with some Quick Attacks finishes the match. I got the Cut HM and then went back to the Pokemon Center to bury Yumi. As for the third gym fight against Lieutenant Surge, I had Dugs use Dig, again and again. I got the Thunder Badge, end of story. I got Maggie back from the daycare and evolved her into Gyarados. Gyarados has Intimidate, which lowers the attack stat of the opponent when sent out. Maggie's nature didn't change. I captured a Voltorb on Route 10 and named it Robin. It has soundproof, so it's immune to sound-based moves like Sing or Scream. While at Rock Tunnel, I catch an Onyx named Roxy, which has Rockhead, which prevents recoil damage. Finally, Malcolm evolves into Venusaur. I catch a Growlithe named Wendy, and she has Flash Fire, so if she gets hit by a Fire-type move, it won't have any effect, but it will make her next Fire-type move 50% stronger. While training, Mia died to a crit Ember against a Growlithe. Crits happen, I should have switched, but I didn't. I go to Lavender Town and bury Mia. While at Pokemon Tower, I fight Gary again. It's another Paula vs Pidgeotto fight, with a 6 level advantage. 2 wing attacks and it's Gary's Gyarados next. His Slash did some damage, so I swapped to Malcolm. Sleep Powder and Razor Leaf combo did the trick. Next was Execute, so I swapped to a healed Paula. A wing attack scrambled the Execute. Paula beat the Kadabra, last was Charmeleon. A few Sand Attacks and wing attacks finished the match. At Celadon City, we find an Eevee and name her Farah. Farah has Runaway, so she can flee any wild Pokemon fight. Since Eevee was a gift Pokemon at Celadon City, that means I can't get any of the casino Pokemon like Abra or Dratini. Next gym fight is Erica. It's Victory Bell versus Paula, a few wing attacks, and it's onto Tangela. Rinse and it's onto Vileplume. Repeat, and the 4th gym badge, the Rainbow Badge, is acquired. Next is raiding Team Rocket headquarters. One thing that struck me as odd was after he beat the grunt at the casino, he says he has to tell the boss. But when he goes without flipping the switch. I find Giovanni and the fight begins. It's Onyx versus Maggie, so I swap to Malcolm. A Razor Leaf takes Onyx and Rhyhorn down. For the Kangaskhan, a Sleep Powder Leech Seed isn't enough, so I switch to Maggie and finish the fight with the Dragon Rage. After that, the Sylph Scope is acquired and is on to the Pokemon Tower. I catch a Ghastly named Gale. Gale has the ability Levitate, so moves like Magnitude and Earthquake won't have any effect. Paulo finally evolves into Pidgeot. I finish taking on the Pokemon Tower and get the Pokey Flute. I catch a Snorlax in Route 16 named Jay with the ability Immunity, so he can't be poisoned. I catch a Poliwag at Fuchsia City named Morgan with Water Absorb, which means more health if he's hit by Water-type moves. I also catch a Venonat at Route 15 named Vi. She has compound eyes like Kobe. I catch a Doduo on Route 16 named Harvey's with the ability Early Bird, so it'll awaken faster from sleep. I get the Surf and Strength HM after dealing with the Safari Zone. Eventually, I decide to face Koga. It starts with Kobe versus Coughing. A Psybeam takes him down, and next is Muck. Kobe uses Stun Spore as Muck uses Acid Armor. Next is Psybeam against Minimize. A Sludge takes about half health, so I switch to Maggie. A Dragon Rage almost takes Muck down, so Koga uses a Hyper Potion. A few turns later, and Muck uses Toxic. I use an Antidote, and Maggie uses Dragon Rage. Several turns later, and Koga uses Hyper Potion, and Muck's defense and evasion increases once more. I bring up Paula to Feather Dance and Sand Attack the Muck. More several turns later, Paula finally takes Muck down. Next is another Coughing, so I switch to Jay, who takes a few Body Slams and tanks a Self-Destruct. Finally is a Weezing, so I have Jay yawn and damage him with the Body Slam. After a few more turns, I thought to let Kobe run it back. The Weezing survives a Psybeam, wakes up, and does a critical Sludge, killing Kobe. I have Maggie avenge Kobe with Dragon Rage. I now have the Soul Badge. Kobe's death was preventable. I had Awakening, and even if Snorlax missed, he would have landed a hit eventually. I go to the Pokemon Center and bury Kobe with the rest. Moving forward, I go to the daycare center and get back Bia, and she quickly evolves into Firo. Onto the story where I storm Silphco. For some reason, Gary's there and isn't stopping Team Rocket, but only to fight me. It's Paula versus Pidgeot, and Paula reigns supreme. Next is Gyarados, so I sent out Malcolm. A few turns later, and next is Execute. I swap to Paula and she wings it. Now it's Alakazam, so I sent out Jay to Body Slam him. Finally, it's Charizard, so Jay does some damage and I switch to Maggie. Maggie finishes the fight and Gary leaves. I get Lapras on floor 7, naming her Lapis. She has Water Absorb. Since I got Lapras, I can't get Hitmonlee or Hitmonchan at the fighting gym. Now I fight Giovanni again. It starts with Malcolm against Nidorino, so I have Maggie Intimidate and Surf. Next is Rhyhorn, who also goes down to Surf. The Kangaskhan survives a few surfs and feints to a bite. Finally, it's Nidoqueen, so more water moves and I beat Giovanni. On to Sabrina. It's Jay versus Kadabra, who goes down to a Body Slam. The Mr. Mime sets a barrier and a baton pass to Venonat. I have Paula take over as she wings it. Next is the Mr. Mime, who goes down to a wing attack. Finally, it's Alakazam, who combines, survives a wing attack, and gets a critical Psychic. I have Maggie avenge Paula. The Alakazam puts up a tough fight, but he also goes down, and I gained the Marsh Badge. After the fight, I let Paula rest in peace with the others. I have Poliwag evolve into Poliwhirl and trade it for a Jinx in Cerulean City. Jinx is named Zinx with Oblivious, so Zinx can't get infatuated because of Oblivious. I catch a Tentacle on Route 19 named Ran with Liquid Ooze, so any HP draining moves will damage the user instead of healing them. I also got the HM Fly at Route 16. Next, I catch a Horsey with Swift Swim and name her Maya below Pallet Town. However, it turns out I was still in Pallet Town jurisdiction, so that one didn't count anymore. I head down a little further to Route 21 and catch a Tangela with Chlorophyll and name him Tango. I catch a Psyduck at Seafoam Islands with Damp and name her Joan. Damp disables moves like Explosion or Self-Destruct. I also catch a Seadra on Route 20 named Sora with Poison Point. If the Pokemon is hit by a contact move, there's a 30% chance of getting poisoned. I revive an Almanite with Swiftfoot named Odie at Cinnabar's laboratory. I capture a Coughing at Pokemon Mansion. He has Levitate and I named him Smokey. I find the key at the Pokemon Mansion and head to the gym. Next was Blaine's gym battle. At this point, Maggie had learned Rain Dance, so she Rain Danced and watered her way to victory, and Blaine gave me the Volcano badge. Next, I deal with Bill's Sevi Island side quest. I catch a Ponyta with Runaway at Kindle Road and name him Len. I found Lostel at Berry Forest and captured the Hypno since she was the first encounter. The Hypno, now named Hilda, had insomnia, so sleep and yawn won't have any effect. With that side quest done, it's back to badge collecting. I faced off against Giovanni one last time. Malcolm made quick work of both Rhyhorns. Next was Doug Trio, so I had Maggie Rain Dance and Surf. The Nido Queen and Nido King are defeated by Surf as well. Giovanni gave me the Earth badge, so now I have all 8 badges. I hit to the casino and acquired some useful items and TMs. I gave Maggie the Thunderbolt TM and Mystic Water item. Now I go towards Victory Road and fight Gary again. It would have started with Paula, but Jay's just as capable. Next is Rhyhorn, so I switched to Malcolm and end it with a Razor Leaf. Next was Alakazam, so I sent out Maggie and she Rain Danced. It was close, but Alakazam future-sighted, so I felt someone would be sacked. I ultimately decided it would be Lapras, who actually survived. So I switched to Bia, then to Malcolm against the Execute. Execute feints the Poison Powder. Next is Charizard, so I switched to Maggie, who eventually takes him down. Next is Gyarados, so I eventually switched to Jay, who wins with a Yawn and Body Slam. All that stands in my way is Victory Road and the Elite Four. I have a few close calls, but I survived the Victory Road. I do a bit more training and finally summon the courage to face the Elite Four. Looking back, the journey has its ups and downs, and these next 5 wins will be for our fallen comrades. I start against Lorelei. It's Maggie against Dugong. It takes a few Thunderbolts, and then it's on to the Cloyster. The Cloyster also goes down rather quickly. As for Slowbro, it's a few more Thunderbolts as well. Next is Jinx, so I have Jay take her on. Eventually, I switched to Lapis, which speed things up. Finally was the enemy Lapras, so I have Lapis use Perish Song, and 3 turns later, both the Lapras and Lorelei are defeated. 1 down, 4 to go. After healing, it's on to Bruno. It starts with Onyx getting one-shot by Razor Leaf from Malcolm. Next is Hitmonchan, who puts up a good fight against Maggie and Malcolm, but ultimately is also taken down. Same goes for Machamp, a few turns later, and it's on to Hitmonlee. I finally let Bia shine with the Drill Peck. Last was Onyx, so I let Jay finish the fight. A Yawn with Brick Break finishes the fight. Now on to Agatha. I let Zinx take on the team with Psychic. I'm not sure if it was speed based is why, but I'm positive it was the EVs Zinx got from fighting the Pidgeys, Pidgeotos, Spiritos, and Fearos on the route right of Fuchsia City. They had speed EVs, which added up nicely. This fight is the only reason why I bothered explaining EVs and IVs at the start of the video, since I thought the speed EVs were the reason for a speedy Jinx. With a flawless victory, I move up against Lance. I let Zinx started Ice Punch on Gyarados, who then landed a critical Hyper Beam. Her contributions against Agatha won't be forgotten. I let Jay body slam the Gyarados into fainting. Next was Aerodactyl. I let Maggie finish it with a Surf, and it's onto the Dragonair. I switched to Jay, who does a few body slams too. The second Dragonair also got body slammed. Last was Dragonite, and a few more body slams, and Jay is half health. Time for a pop quiz. Should I A, have Jay do another body slam, B, heal with a Hyper Potion, or C, switch to a different Pokemon? If you pick B, you are correct. However, I chose option A, and Jay goes down to a critical Hyper Beam, the second death of the Elite Four. I have Lapras finish the fight with Ice Beam. In retrospect, Zinx's death was entirely preventable since Maggie had Intimidate and Thunderbolt, or Malcolm, who consistently dealt with Gyaradoses. As for Jay, I really should have just healed. Now, I only have 4 Pokemon to face against Gary, and a Powerhouse was down. I healed my team one last time and finally used those rare candies. I made the mistake of giving Jay a rare candy. So, but he's dead, but he just... yeah. Now it's on to face off against Gary Oak, the champion of the Kanto region. I have Lapis Ice Beam the Pidgeot and he goes down. Next is Rhydon, so I have Lapis use Safeguard, then switch to Malcolm, who takes the Rhyhorn down with Razor Leaf. Next was Alakazam. I had Malcolm use Toxic, and was going to have him use Leech Seed, but Alakazam didn't Calm Mind and went for a Psychic instead. I sent out Bia and healed Lapis. Bia goes down to a Psychic, so I sent out Maggie. Alakazam almost goes down, but Gary uses the full restore. I was hoping the Thunderbolt would land a Paralysis, but it didn't. It's close, but Gyarados takes Alakazam down. Only 3 more remain. It's Exeggutor, so that takes a while. Eventually, Exeggutor goes down, and it's Gary's Gyarados next. Luckily, Maggie has some Thunderbolts left, and the Gyarados goes down too. Finally, it's Charizard that remains in our path to beating the Fire Red Nuzlocke. Maggie uses Rain Dance, and ends the fight with a Surf. With that, I beat Pokemon Fire Red Nuzlocke with only Lapis and Maggie still alive. Now for some self-reflection. One of the things I should have done was pay more attention to nature, IVs, and EVs. Although I explained what they were at the start, I didn't necessarily know that during the run. I knew that defeating Pokemon would give an extra stat, but that was it. And for nature, I didn't know which nature gave what boost and what debuff either. If I had known which Pokemon gave what EV and where, I would have maybe grinded for that. I think maybe limiting the amount of items I use in battle would definitely make things more interesting for the viewers. I remember a Nuzlocker talking about how broken items make the game, and the Nuzlocker was certainly right. Maybe next time only use heals for gym fights, rival fights, and organization fights. Maybe use a maximum of 3. Or take on the entire gym at one go. Don't use the same team per gym fight. We lost some good Pokemon throughout the run, but not everything was bleak. We had some good fights, some easy, some hard, and some we'll never forget. I attempted a few Nuzlocks in the past, but this is definitely the first one that I've ever actually completed. Would I ever do another Nuzlocke again? I don't think so. In the end, the Nuzlocke was completed, I became the champion of Kanto, and our survivors can now retire in peace. Thanks for being here, alongside me. Wild Waldo, signing out.